In addition, the presentation materials that will be presented will also be shared with you. We have scheduled an on-topic Q&A after our presentation today, so please hold all questions until then. Now, to tell us more about this amazing program, I'm honored to introduce the Commissioner of the Department of Sanitation, Jessica Tisch. Ms. Tisch, you are muted.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to everyone who is joining us. I am so thrilled that you are spending a portion of your afternoon with us. Today, I'm going to provide you a briefing on curbside composting, which I'm very thrilled to say is coming to all 5 boroughs the first week of October, the week of October 6th. Composting and curbside composting being door-to-door service weekly to all 3.5 million residences in New York City is something that has been elusive in New York. We've been talking about it in New York City for over a decade, and Mayor Adams has finally made it happen. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, first, background on composting. What can you compost? 3 big groups of things that can be composted. The first is leaf and yard waste. What is leaf and yard waste? Plants, leaves, twigs, grass. If you have a backyard and you're doing yard work, that can all go in the compost bin. Second group of things that can be composted is food scraps. Anything from your kitchen, anything you can eat, meat, dairy, pizza, bagel and cream cheese, you name it. If it's edible, you can compost it. And the third group of things is food soiled paper. So that means maybe a paper plate that has had food on it, or a paper napkin, or a paper towel, a tea bag. Those types of things can also go in the compost bin. We'll go to the next slide. So what we are planning and what we are about to roll out the week of October 6th is the largest, easiest to use composting program ever. How's it going to work? Everyone in New York City, all 3.5 million residences, they all have a recycling day. And on your recycling day, when you would normally set out your metal, glass, and plastic, as well as your paper, cardboard, you will now be able to set out your compost bin. So there's not a new day to remember. It will all happen on your recycling day. Instead of collecting 2 sources on your recycling day for recycling, we're going to collect a third, which is going to be your compost. And it's really easy to use. All you do is put your material out in a bin and we will handle the rest. There are no signups or special dates that you have to remember. This program is a mandatory program. The City Council passed a law about a year ago requiring curbside composting. And so all buildings must participate, including single family homes, small apartment buildings, and multi-unit residential buildings. We will start giving out warnings when we see non-compliance in the spring of 2025. And that will be how our first enforcement starts, just as warnings, and that begins spring of 2025. The idea there is that we want to give all 8.3 million New Yorkers an opportunity to develop the muscle memory on what to separate. And once they've had about 6 months to develop that muscle memory, we'll start out with warnings. You can go to the next slide. Composting is a very powerful environmental solution, and it reduces waste and carbon emissions. And that's because instead of sending the material to a landfill where it sits for a decade producing methane gas, instead we will send it to become turned into either soil or renewable energy. And I'll talk more about that on a later slide. But in addition to composting being a powerful environmental solution, it's also an incredible strategy to keep rats away. Every day, New York City, between our residences and our businesses, we set out 44 million pounds of trash on our curbs. And we've looked inside of our waste, and we know that 1/3 of the material in those black trash bags is food waste. It's an incredible amount of food waste that we produce every day in New York City. Historically, most of that food waste has been, when it's collected in the trash bags, goes and sits in a landfill, as I mentioned, where it produces methane gas for decades to come. But instead, we're going to ask New Yorkers to separate out that food waste and put it in the composting bin, where not only will we turn it into soil or renewable energy, but it won't be in those trash bags for the rats to eat and go after. Let's go to the next slide. We've started rolling out this program in phases. The entire borough of Brooklyn and the entire borough of Queens already receive weekly curbside composting service. The week of October 6th, we will be turning on the other 3 boroughs. So that means Manhattan, Bronx, and Staten Island. And for the first time, the city will have a universal curbside composting program every week on the residents' recycling day. We can go to the next slide. Now, I'm going to move away for a second from our curbside composting service that we're rolling out, that's starting the week of October 6th. And I'm going to talk about our other efforts to get the food waste out of the trash bags and into composting facilities. So the first thing we've done in this administration is every school in New York City, every public school in New York City, there are almost 2,000 of them. They all have, under Mayor Adams, composting service for the food waste that they produce in their cafeterias. This was a really important step we took a few months ago when we turned on composting service 5 days a week for all public schools in New York City. Go to the next slide. But that's not all we've done. We have also rolled out several hundred orange composting bins across all 5 boroughs. These bins are available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They're universally available. And anyone who wants to deposit food waste into those bins is able to. There is an app called the NYC Compost app that you can download from the app stores. And we've seen great success with these bins as we've rolled them out. They have been opened by New Yorkers over 1 million times since we've rolled out the bins. Let's go to the next slide. I want to talk a bit about misconceptions, things out there that are not true related to composting. And the first is that composting attracts rats and other pests. To the absolute contrary, as I recently mentioned, it does not. In fact, it helps keep rats and pests away by getting the food waste out of the black trash bags, out of the all-night, all-you-can-eat rat buffet, as I've said before, and instead into containers. The second misconception is that composting is complicated. It really isn't. All you do is place anything from your kitchen, anything from your yard in the composting bin. We will come collect it on your recycling day. It is a free service in New York City. We like to say, if you cook it or you grow it, you can throw it. The third misconception is that you can't compost meat, bones, dairy, or cooked food. Not the case. Anything from your kitchen, anything from your yard, if you cook it or you grow it, you can throw it. This misconception came about because there have been other composting programs not run by the city that are more limited in the type of material that they will accept. But New York City's curbside composting program will accept all food scraps. The fourth misconception is that you can't put plastic bags in your composting bin. You can. We have a special machine at our composting facility that in an automated way will take the food waste out of the plastic bags and put the plastic bags off to the side. So that is something that we have overcome. And I think it's really important for the usability of the system. And finally, another misconception is that most compost will just get thrown out and go into landfill with other waste. Not the case. Whatever ends up in those compost bins, whatever is set out, if it is organic material, if it's food or yard waste, it will get composted. We have a huge compost facility in Staten Island where we recently increased the capacity to 20 times the former capacity, and we are prepared to compost or digest all food and yard waste that is set out by all 8.3 million New Yorkers. Next slide. As part of this program, to get the word out, the Department of Sanitation is in the process of doing a huge amount of outreach in Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island, much as we did in Brooklyn and Queens when those boroughs started this program. And what we're doing is door canvassing and door knocking at every single family home in all buildings with 1 to 9 apartments. We're also hosting information sessions and meetings with property management companies, tenant organizations, residents, community boards, and staff. And finally, we are sending out educational mailers to all residents of Bronx, Manhattan, and Staten Island. Next. There are a number of free resources that New Yorkers can access at nyc.gov/sanitation materials. And finally, do you have one more slide? Nope, okay, that was it. I want to just, I thought there was another slide in here about what happens to the material when we collect it. I mentioned a bit about this before, but just to give more information. There are 2 different types of facilities that the material can be sent to. The first type of facility is a composting facility, where we will take the material and we will turn it into soil. That's a several week to several month process, but it will go to our composting facility. We have a big one on Staten Island, and there the food waste that you set out will be turned into soil. The second type of facility that it can be sent to is what's called an anaerobic digester. And what we do with anaerobic digestion is that food waste, yard waste, it will be turned into renewable energy. It will go out onto the power grid in New York City. So that is my prepared presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have first on the specific topic of composting.
Great. So we'll open the floor to on-topic questions. Please use the raise hand function in your browser. And when your name is called, you can unmute and ask your question, or you may also type your question in the chat window. We'll begin with Gonzalo. Gonzalo, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My question is, I know this program was an active program before. It stopped for a time period and now it's beginning again. If you can just give us some details on why it stopped. And
I just want to correct that because that's a misconception. New York City has never had a universal curbside composting program. Under the de Blasio administration, it was rolled out in a number of districts, but certainly not every district in the city. It was around half of the districts in New York City, and only those districts where there was the most enthusiasm for composting. So New York City has never had a universal program that has operated citywide. Second, when we first were starting the rollout, we said we were going to go borough by borough. We started in Queens, and then we moved to Brooklyn. When we started in Queens, we wanted to test it to make sure that we had the model for how this was going to work correct. So we rolled out for a number of months in Queens, and then we said we were going to take a 3-month pause to assess how the program worked, happened to be in the winter months, and that we would resume our service again. I believe it was that April. That is exactly what happened. But since then, we went to Brooklyn. We've never paused Brooklyn. And now we are fulfilling our commitment on time and on budget. And we are rolling it out in Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island the week of October 6th. Service begins on your recycling day.
Thank you for the
I
clarification.
appreciate the question.
Thank you. And now Rick from the Roosevelt Islander.
Rick, you're on mute.
Hello. Hi, good afternoon. Hey, I was wondering, do you have any metrics on how the program has worked so far in the boroughs? And will the program be working on Roosevelt Island?
Yes. So let me start with the Roosevelt Island question, and then we'll turn to numbers. Absolutely. The program will work on Roosevelt Island, and on Roosevelt Island, it will be slightly different than the way the rest of the city works. The compost in Roosevelt Island will be handled the exact same way that recycling is handled on Roosevelt Island. So again, it will be set out on your recycling day. It is then taken to a centralized location, as you know, where we then come and collect. So yes,
How is that different from other locations?
the centralized facility at Roosevelt Island, the Department of Sanitation collects from one place, the recycling, rather than house to house. But for Roosevelt Island residents, it will be the same as it is for the rest of the city. You set your compost out on your collection day, and we will come and get it.
Also, on Roosevelt Island, we have those bins. I think we have like 3 or 4 of the composting bins. I've been trying to get statistics on the use of those bins on like either a weekly or monthly basis. I haven't been able to do that yet. Is that possible?
Yes, we can get that information to you. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
And you're asking for the ones specifically on Roosevelt Island?
Yes.
Yep.
Like 3 or 4.
Yep, we can get that. We can get that to you. And in terms of the data on the program so far, we recently released the mayor's management report, where we reported that the amount of waste diversion in New York City has gone up now 3 years in a row. And part of that success has been driven by diverting all of this organic material, first from Queens, then from Queens and Brooklyn. And so what we expect is, now that we are turning another 3 boroughs on, that next year we will have another increase in our diversion rate to make it 4 years in a row of increased diversion. And that makes sense, right? Going after this new source of divertible material, organic waste, we know it represents about 1/3 of our waste stream. And that is why I believe we are seeing such gains in our diversion rate. Last year, to give you a sense, we diverted 260 million pounds of organic material from landfill.
Are there metrics on compliance rates by property owners?
Not yet. And the reason why not yet is because we have not yet begun our enforcement of organic waste separation. As I mentioned earlier, that will begin in the spring of 2025. And the idea there is, as I mentioned before, we want to give all New Yorkers, all 8.3 million New Yorkers, an opportunity to develop the muscle memory to learn how they're going to start separating their food and yard waste before we start any meaningful enforcement. And once enforcement starts, then we will have more data around compliance and or lack of compliance.
Thank you. Natasha?
Commissioner, thank you for your remarks. I had a two-part question. One is, you mentioned, if I remember correctly, two major sites for where the composting will happen, one in Staten Island and the other. I just wanted to, find out a little bit.
Can I just clarify a second?
Yeah.
I didn't mean there are only two sites where it will happen. I
Okay.
meant there's two types of sites. It can be sent to composting facilities, or it can be sent to anaerobic digesters. There's more than one place where we compost in New York City, and there is certainly more than one place where we will do anaerobic digestion. I mentioned when I was talking about composting, the Staten Island compost facility, because that is the biggest compost facility we have, and that is also the one that is run by the city. But other material could be sent to other compost locations as well. So it's not just two facilities. I wanted just to clarify, but go ahead with the rest of your question.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you for clarifying that. So would it be correct to say that whatever the facilities are, the exact number, they are all going to be in the New York City area or New York, or are they also going to be some outside?
Not necessarily. Certainly the largest composting facility is in New York City, but there may be some material that is either composted or digested outside of the 5 boroughs. But I'm very comfortable to say that the overwhelming majority of the material will be processed in New York City.
Okay, and the second question that I had was, can you outline once again, broadly the budget for this program, and what are the plans after that to track the budget, and is this something that's going to be reviewed after the first 6 months? I'm just curious about the overall process to manage that aspect.
So one of the reasons that I'd mentioned previously that this is not the first time in New York City that they've attempted to roll out a curbside composting program. Those previous programs were not terribly successful. And the reason why they weren't terribly successful is, one, they were incredibly expensive and not scalable. You couldn't scale citywide at that cost. And two, they didn't collect a lot of material. So it was a big dollar value for not a big gain. And what we did before we rolled out in Queens, when we were developing this new model, was we designed a program that was going to be 1/3 the cost of previous curbside composting programs. And the idea is not only would it be 1/3 the cost, but that we would collect more material. So let me first talk about cost, and then I'll talk about how we're going to collect more material. On cost, we were able to bring costs down dramatically by using what's called dual bin trucks. So when you see a sanitation truck, a garbage truck, there are two different kinds you could see. One is the kind that has just one big compartment in the back and everything goes in that compartment. The second type of truck you might see is what we call a dual bin truck, which instead of having one compartment in the back has two different compartments in the back. We use this a lot for recycling. You could put metal, glass, and plastic on one side and paper and cardboard in the other side. And historically, the curbside composting programs in New York City, they were very expensive because they only used the single bin trucks and not the dual bin trucks. But we found by using dual bin trucks, especially in lower density parts of the city, you could collect trash, refuse on one side, and compost on the other side. And by using these dual bin trucks, among other things, we were able to dramatically bring down the cost of the program. The second lever we pulled to bring down the costs is we hired more sanitation workers. Instead of running the program on overtime, which is very expensive, we hired several hundred additional sanitation workers so that we could run the program on straight time. And so those are the two main reasons we were able to achieve huge cost savings that have allowed this program to go citywide. Not things that users, that our customers, that New Yorkers would see or know about, but things that were very important to us to make sure that the costs were such that this could be scaled. The second piece I mentioned is like, does the program work? Are we diverting material? Are we diverting food waste and yard waste from landfill? And could we divert more material or enough material to make the program successful? And the way we're doing that is by making the program simple and easy to use. As I mentioned before, there's not a separate day or a special day or a certain type of bin you have to use. Set it out on your recycling day. Everyone knows when their recycling day is. Put it in any bin. As long as you tell us that it says organics on it, or you write organics or compost on it. If it's in a bin and it says compost on it, we will come and collect it. And so I think it used to be you could only use one type of bin to participate in the program. I think by relaxing the requirements on what type of bin you used, we're also making it easier for New Yorkers to participate. And the final thing is, by getting rid of requirements, oh, you can do meat but not dairy, or dairy but not meat, and no chicken bones. By saying, if you cook it or you grow it, you can throw it. We're attempting to make it really simple and easy to use for New Yorkers. We know that New Yorkers, we've got lots of things on our minds. I certainly have a lot of things on my mind. And we are offering this to New Yorkers as a service. We are not asking New Yorkers to provide a service to us. And so to do that, you have to make it very simple and easy to use and easy to participate.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to get a sense of the budget for the first year for this.
I believe, if I recall correctly, that it's $34 million. But if I am not correct, Josh or someone in my office is going to reach out to you and let you know. And that is for the universal collection.
Thank you so much. El Haji?
Hi, JD.
Hello.
Hi, Commissioner. So it was good to have you with the Ethnic Media. We know how much the mayor care about the Ethnic Media.
I sure do too.
Yes, I know. The last time we spoke was when we was doing to make sure people know about the batteries that used to be on the so the ads that we did. So the first question is like, our electrical bill going to be low from now on with this going on if it works the way you guys plan to do so? That's my first question. And are you guys really, I think you're going to have to focus on the restaurant when it comes down to our community. If I take the example in Harlem, we have a lot of African restaurant and so on and so forth, ethnic in the immigrant community, a lot of restaurant, and most of them, I'm sure, they not too much know about this great thing that you guys trying to put together. And the third question is, are you guys going to do it in different languages? I think that would be just great. Thank you.
Okay, so let's start with the power grid. If New Yorkers compost at scale, if everyone put all of their food and yard waste in the composting bin, and we were able to send that out over the power grid, yes, it would provide a lot more renewable energy at lower cost. But there is a long way. I just want to be really clear. There is a long way between where we are right now, when we're starting out, and that future state. And we would really need to see composting happen at a bigger scale than it's happening now. And that's the goal, and that's what we're driving towards. On the restaurants, what I talked about in this briefing was residential collection, the 3.5 million residences. There are separate rules in place in the city of New York that require certain types of restaurants, but not all restaurants, to compost.
Okay.
What I would like to see happen, we are rolling out a change to how commercial trash is managed in New York City. Commercial trash means trash from the businesses, meaning non-residences, businesses of New York City. And that change is starting now, and it will take a few years to roll out. When that change goes in place, and it's called the implementation of commercial waste zones, what it will do is it will mandate that all of the commercial carters, the people, the companies that businesses pay to collect their waste, that they make the cost of composting or picking up the food waste cheaper than the cost of collecting trash. Once that goes into effect, and for all businesses in New York City and all residences in and all restaurants in New York City, once it is cheaper to pay someone to collect your compost than it is your trash, I would like then to expand the mandate for organic separation to all restaurants and frankly, all businesses in New York City. It will be a win for the environment and it's a win for the business because it will be cheaper for them to compost rather than landfill. And then your final question was about language access. And yes, we provide all materials that we have at the Department of Sanitation in the local law 63 languages. I believe there's 13 of, is there 13 of them? We comply with local law 63 and all of the materials are available in those languages.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I believe we have another question from Bronx Daily from Gonzalo.
Yes, thank you. I know that there's progression that needs to be done for everything to be set. When the time comes for the fines, is there a set price that's been set, or is this something that's still being worked on?
It's actually set, I think, by local law. Josh, do you know what the fine is for the first offense?
Yes, and it's actually an unusual one where it depends on the size of the building. It's the same fine as failure to separate your recyclables. If your building has 1 to 8 units, the first offense is $25. 9 or more, it's $50.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Rico, Radio Soleil.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioner. It appears that there's something I'm missing. You said this program has been effective in Brooklyn for some time, and that's one thing. Second, that it's a mandatory program, but I'm not seeing these bins in front of all apartment buildings in Brooklyn. So is there something I'm missing?
No, it's been working in Brooklyn. Josh, do you remember when we rolled out in Brooklyn?
Yes, it's just shy of a year ago, October of last year.
In October of last year, we brought the service to Brooklyn and we collect compost from every district in Brooklyn weekly on the residents' recycling day. So when they leave out either a brown bin or any bin that says organic compost on it, we come collect it. Our trucks roll every week to every residence in Brooklyn on the recycling day. And we certainly collect a lot of material in Brooklyn. So perhaps you don't see it either because it's once a week on the recycling day and it's put out in a bin, which can look like a trash bin that just has a sign that says compost on it.
So those bins, they're not supposed to be outside, or are they inside the apartments? Because in my block where I am, I can see a lot of apartment buildings without bins in front of them.
Every residence can store the bin wherever they want. They can store it indoors if they want. They can store it outdoors. I don't mean to imply by any means that there is universal compliance in the borough of Brooklyn. I do think we will see compliance go up once enforcement starts. Right now, it's largely been a voluntary program rather than a mandatory program, but by the city council bill, it becomes mandatory in the spring of 2025.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I think, Ekta, did you have your hand up? Were you raising your hand? From India? Did you have a question?
Yeah, hi. Although I didn't raise my hand, but yes, I would like to ask. So how has the response been from the New Yorkers till now?
We've certainly had, curbside composting has been something that lots of New Yorkers have been asking for, as I mentioned, for over a decade, probably like 15 years now. It's very much been a topic in New York City government, something that New Yorkers have been pushing for. And so for the New Yorkers who have been pushing for this for a really long time, we see a lot of excitement and a lot of energy about it. Those are the people, however, that we don't need to convince or educate. They already know how to separate their material. It is everyone else that we are now on a massive campaign to inform about this new service that we are offering, which is why we're doing door-to-door knocking, we're sending mailers to every residence, and frankly, we're talking to all of you to help get the message out there because we want to see widespread compliance with the program. It's the right thing to do for the environment, and it's the right thing to do to keep the rats away.
Thank you so much. And another question from Rick from Roosevelt Island.
Does the sanitation department provide the bins to the buildings, or do they have to get it themselves?
Good question. Anyone in Brooklyn, Staten Island, and excuse me, let me start over. Anyone in Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island can order, if they would like, a compost bin from New York City until October 28th, and we will deliver it to their homes. We've had lots and lots of orders from those 3 boroughs. We are copying what we did in Queens and Brooklyn, where we had a 3-month period where those residents could order a free bin from the city. If you choose not to order a bin from us, you can use any bin you want in your house, so long as it is 55 gallons or less and has a lid that seals.
Well, is there a difference in terms of bins for, multi-unit apartment buildings?
Every building can pick whatever size, choose whichever bin they want to use, so long as it is not more than 55 gallons. It's the same requirement for our trash as well. But this one has to have a lid that seals. And so, yes, buildings of different sizes choose to use different size bins depending on how much food waste they produce.
And how like on Roosevelt Island and other communities, there was a food scrap drop-off site that delivered their food scraps to Big Reuse. I'm wondering, is Big Reuse involved in any of this? The
Big Reuse program is it's complementary, meaning it's in addition to this curbside composting program that we are running. So no, Big Reuse is not involved in the collection, this curbside collection program, but they provide yet another opportunity in addition to curbside composting. Now, in addition to the smart bins, you can also choose to leave your food waste at a food scrap drop-off site.
Okay. And as part of your outreach, is there any possibility of doing any kind of a local community advertising with publishers such as ourselves?
Unfortunately, we didn't get any budget for advertising related to curbside composting, although I'll be honest, it was something that I was really hoping to be able to do.
And Rico from Radio Soleil, one more question.
Yes. But I just want to be clear that we didn't do, it's not just that we don't have budget to do community and ethnic media advertising. If we did, it would that's where it would go. We didn't get any budget for advertising on this. Sorry, go ahead, Rico.
Yeah, if an apartment manager is not requesting these bins, and I can guarantee you, where my radio station is, a lot of these buildings or apartments, they don't have these bins in front of. So what are you suggesting? Should the tenants call the sanitation department and tell them?
They shouldn't call. They could go on our website, nyc.gov/curbside composting, and there is a form there where they can request it.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Well, if that's all the questions we have for today, I'd like to thank everybody for coming today, and especially Commissioner Tisch. Thank you so much for
I have a voice for radio. Have you ever been on the radio?
No, but my wife enjoys it, so it's fine. I want to make sure that all of you understand this has been recorded, so this will be available to you, and the wonderful presentation they gave today will also be sent your way. So thank you so much. If you have any follow-up questions, you can email pressoffice@dsny.nyc.gov. Again, that's pressoffice@dsny.nyc.gov. Thank you all for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you.